Good morning, everyone. I'm Linda Vester Greenberg, your moderator. I want to introduce you, in case you don't already know, want to introduce you to Olga Ramos from the Boys and Girls Club of Puerto Rico, Beatriz Polhamus from Banco Popular, Fundación de Banco Popular, and Carlos Torres Baez from Para la Naturaleza. So just to very quickly kind of set the scene, so to speak, for philanthropic efforts on the island, in case anyone might want to, or in case there's a tendency to think, oh, the island is fine since Maria. It's covered. It's recovered. There really aren't too many pressing needs. Disabuse me of that notion. Anyone want to jump in?
If you think that, you should come visit our communities. I'd be happy to host anyone in our clubs. I think that Puerto Rico, if you go to the metro area, seems to be recovered, but if you get into the deep pockets where poverty is really concentrated, that's a different story. And it doesn't have to do necessarily with Maria. Maria just made it worse. It's a long time story. In our case, we serve kids and youth in Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico, historically, close to 60% of our kids live under poverty. So,
and I would add also that even before Maria, a lot of us thought that Puerto Rico was fine. And I always say that Maria, with uncovering the leaves from the trees, really uncovered poverty for a lot of people in Puerto Rico. So yes, we've done a lot since after Maria. We were very lucky that efforts from local philanthropic entities traveling mainly to the U.S. To try and convince U.S.-based funders to invest in Puerto Rico. That work that had been done for, I would say, 5 years prior to Maria, really prepared those funders to respond after Maria. And now the challenge is that a lot of those funders that were here after Maria and invested millions of dollars in very important initiatives after Maria are now leaving. They funded many innovative, new, and needed projects in Puerto Rico through many nonprofit organizations, and now these organizations are starting to feel the heat from not receiving, the same amounts, and some are just leaving the island completely. So there's a lot of need to continue those kinds of projects.
I'm going to just throw out questions and not address anything to any one of you particularly, because I'd love you all to just kind of finish each other's thoughts or even, contradict each other where necessary. And please, anyone, if you want to ask questions, raise a hand so we can see you, and we want to make this the most valuable few minutes for you as well. So how vital is it now at this point that the NGOs and the business sector get partnered up?
I will get that. I think it's just following what Beatriz was saying, just that need of, that help after Maria. Now, organizations they grew bigger, they need more funding for completing projects, or a lot of new projects that came out. It's not a recovery. Projects are more investing in the communities, especially rural communities. So I think it's very important for NGOs to help the structure of a lot of these organizations and community groups. Para Naturaleza, we've been working with resilient centers through donors who will help to put solar panels and water filtration in the resilient centers that they've been working. And now a lot of these resilient centers are becoming community hubs, and they're being growing to help the community in different aspects that we didn't even thought about.
What, if you could think of, a key skill set that NGOs on this island, because in the time that we've been here, my family and I have met some really inspiring and innovative individuals and organizations, but it seems like they also have needs that need to be met. Do they need financial advice? Do they need advice on systems? Do they need advice on marketing? Do they need advice on other things I'm not thinking of?
I can take that. I would say that it's not only advice, because a lot of times, these leaders are professional leaders. They know what they need, but they don't have the resources. Or they're just too focused on the task of serving, their participants and the communities, and don't give as much priority to the things that really maintain and sustain the organizations long term. So providing the funds for those things that sometimes are not as sexy, because a lot of funders, us included, sometimes we want to see direct impact and direct services, and really funding for administrative operations, strengthening is not as sexy, but it's important that we do focus on that. And I would also add that sometimes we all feel the need to kind of develop our own thing, and something that I think is as important as having the right strategy is how you execute that strategy. And for us at Popular, it's very important that we really put the communities at the center of everything that we do. So we don't start anything without really going to those leaders at the communities, to those leaders at the nonprofit organizations, to either help us develop whatever we think is needed to improve, in our case, education quality, environmental protection, and entrepreneurship. So it's important that we look for their advice in developing anything that we do, and that everything that we do is in partnership with the nonprofit organization. So even though we do have proprietary programs, we serve through the nonprofit organizations on the ground.
Something to add to what Beatriz is mentioning is that if you give a business look at the NGO, which is part of the approach that I've had, I come from the business sector before joining the NGO as staff, whatever is needed for your companies to thrive is needed at the NGO. And to Beatriz's point of wanting to give to what is more sexy, which is the direct impact and the pictures with the check, is what is the structure that is needed to make it happen. In our case, for example, we serve close to 12,000 kids every year, but that takes 400 people to do it. And it takes administration. Comparing to the private sector, the level of compliance in these organizations is out of the norm, because you're complying with state funds, you're complying with federal funds, you're complying with private donors, you're complying with corporations. So at times, you have to think, if you really want to make an impact in the organizations you're investing in, you need to think what is the structure needed and how you are part of that. At times, there are resources needed that can be the advice, but that advice has to be consistent, and there has to be commitments in order to make things happen.
Consistency, you make a good point. So it's not just a one-off gift. Oh, this makes us feel great, and then walk away.
Yes, that was going to be precisely my next point, is that we need to stay the course. So, you're definitely not going to have the impact that at the end of the day you want and that Puerto Rico needs if you go in and just, make a gift one year and then don't make the gift to the same organization the next. Plus, you're going to see the impact over time. So you really need to stay the course. And you're gonna go through the ups and downs, but that really, is what makes it interesting, because then you develop a relationship, you really learn together, you pivot, you develop what you need to develop, increase the amount of funds, because the relationship and the trust starts to really develop, and that's how you're gonna get the most impact out of your investment.
Go ahead, Carlos.
And I think about just these organizations are for the long run, just to keep fueling these organizations with the structure. And also, it's been 6 years since Eureka Maria, so we're at the point of burnout for a lot of these leaders. A lot of these leaders, the executive director is the accountant, is the person that cleaned the center, they do pretty much everything, and they're doing all by their heart. But eventually, you have family, and you're part of the community. And so having some of the people working in these organizations to be able to live out of the work they do is very important. And funding, just the operation of these organizations, can really help these programs for the long run.
Can you talk more about the burnout that you're seeing, Carlos?
The moral?
The burnout.
The burnout, yes. You've been working in disasters, as most of us that we've been here since 2017. It takes a lot of you.
Sí.
So if you keep it staying in this, fixing the problem in a status of emergency, eventually you will burn out. You always get new people that help, but sometimes you could lose that connection of your identity as an organization. Of the people that found it to the people that they continue the project. So sometimes it happens that organizations start with a great idea, but eventually, or they run out of funding, or they burn out, and they just needed just a few more months of funding to keep continue. So it's just about funding and helping out all these organizations. Sometimes they just need just advice, how to do accounting. How Olga mentioned, federal and state, they all have their own different rules when you get their funding and what you need to do. Sometimes they don't know it. You could lose some of the funding just because you didn't ask an extension in time. Something as simple as that. So it's about that technical advice that we can provide to some of these organizations.
And I think there's a misconception between the NGO work and the private sector work. And it's that we're mission driven. We're out there in the communities. We know their needs firsthand. Like Beatriz mentioned, we work towards meeting those needs that we have identified together with them. And it's sometimes thought that us as leader in the NGO sector, since you work with the heart, you have to leave your heart there. If you compare to the private sector, we think about people development, about retreats and having people enjoy their time and making that work-life integration. I don't believe in balance, I believe in integration. So I think it's important to eliminate that misconception. The NGO world, in Puerto Rico and elsewhere, is fueled with professionals. People that have had careers, that have preparations equal or better than whatever you can find in the private sector. And that's often, since it's misconstrued, like when you talk to investors about what is the compensation of an executive director, that raises question. But in the private sector, it doesn't. So I think we need to start working towards that, because sometimes the level of professionalism that is required in this sector is higher. Because a person like me, I'm president for the organization here, you have to be able to pivot in so many channels. So I talk to a kid today, to a parent tomorrow, to an investor, to a donor, a one-off, to government officials, to a lot of people, and you have to constantly change channels, and that requires a skill set. And to have that skill set, nobody comes with a profile. So how do you invest in developing that profile that is needed to run successful NGOs? So I think there are some misconstructions and misconceptions that the private sector need to understand and also help change.
Interesting. So, of course, we all know that Puerto Rico has the unique distinction of having the act, right? So you have a whole population of people who have come to this island who derive these tax benefits and theoretically then have more dollars to turn around and donate. Do NGOs feel like they're sufficiently connected to this population of donors, of potential donors? Or is that a sort of this need that there's no body of aggregators who connects the donor pool to these fantastic NGOs?
I can take that. I think there's still a need to connect. And it has to do with purpose, and it has to do with understanding if the people that benefit from Act 60 in this case will understand the level of collective impact they could have, I think things will be different. There still needs to be a connection to beyond the incentives and beyond the benefits, which are deserved if you're doing the work that you are supposed to do. There has to be a personal connection. Who are you? what do you want to leave behind? Are you here for the long run? Do you really understand what are Puerto Rico's critical needs? And are you willing, and you're able, but are you willing to be part of that? And I think that question of what is my legacy here beyond the benefits, I think that's sometimes the misconnection that happens between this group that keeps getting bigger and the NGO world. There's a lot of social work that is needed in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of social impact that can happen, but that requires a change in mindset as to what you really want to leave behind. To people in the audience that is part of this group that benefits from the incentives, it's important to also think, are you here for 1 year, for your 5,000 or 10,000, or are you here for the long run? Are you willing to do a multi-year commitment based on all of the points that we have expressed? And I think those are the conversations that need to happen. There's more groups having those conversations, but I think as a collective group, there's still room for improvement.
I would also add that, I think that it must be daunting to, to come to a, to a new place and ask yourself, where do I start, right? Where will my investment have the most impact? But there are organizations in Puerto Rico that have supported community organizations for decades. We all have websites. We all have, the names of the organizations that we support. We're more than willing to meet with anyone that wants information on what we do, the types of organizations that we support. We do put a lot of effort in making sure that obviously our investment has the greatest impact. So we do have, evaluation mechanisms, et cetera, to ensure that, and the metrics, et cetera. So not only Fundación Banco Popular and Popular, we support around 200 organizations every year through different channels. But there are, more than, I would say, 30, 40 foundations in the island, plus the other companies that have their community investment programs that, you can all tap into, and we're all more than willing to, to meet. And, we did a lot of that after Maria. And we've had, great success stories. I remember right after Maria, obviously, Lin-Manuel Miranda was raising funds for Hispanic Federation. Mm-hmm. The Hispanic Federation had not invested in the island. And one of the first calls that I received was from Frankie Miranda, who's currently the president of the Hispanic Federation. And I spent hours talking to Frankie those first few weeks. The first 20 investments made, from those almost $50 million now that have been raised after Maria by the Hispanic Federation were two organizations that were supported by Fundación Banco Popular. But since then, they've just done a wonderful job, really, getting to know the communities, and they've, now expanded that list even beyond what we do at Fundación Banco Popular. And, that's the kind of thing that, that's a success story, and that's the kind of thing that we can all do together. The local funders and people that are coming, and like the ACCISTI that want to invest in Puerto Rico.
Carlos, do you feel connected to the donor pool?
I think we, at Naturaleza, we've been doing a good job just to exposing what we do, and that way people can know what we do. But for small organizations, it's a little harder for exposing what they do and have that connection to donors. But I feel, just a recommendation to any donor that move to the island, just drive around and be part of the community, and you will learn where the needs are. It don't take too far away driving from San Juan to know where the needs are. The rural communities, they're in a lot of need, and there is a lot of cool projects to be involved, be in the environmental aspect or in the social aspect. Puerto Rico has a great culture. There is a lot of cultural projects too. They could be help our, we had so many historic buildings, and I know some of the donors have been able to acquire some of the buildings and fix the buildings, up in San Juan and many other our all urban areas. But I think it's just about exposing your work and your needs. Be very direct, and that's what we could help some of these organizations to. Okay, I know these donors, and connect the donors, because they're mostly focused in their work of what they want to do, the community they're serving, but they don't have the time. Or if you are from the rural area, coming to San Juan, it could be daunting. Just to meet with someone and tell them your needs. So it's about how certain organizations could help other organizations and foundations. If you want to donate through a foundation or directly through a project, I guess it's something you have to evaluate. But there's a big need for those direct project funding, and people to fall in love with these projects and these organizations. And it's been happening, but I think it needs more exposure.
Just curious. So they're going to be, they're going to be a subset of people who move to the island, and they have experience in being philanthropic, and they look for certain things on the mainland, like the Guide Star rating and Charity Navigator rating, and those are things that are benchmarks, and they look at Form 990s, and they want to see what your accounting looks like, and does 80% of your budget go directly to services provided? How do you square the circle of getting that understanding and those sorts of evaluations to the NGOs here, so that they can kind of meet the standards that experienced high net worth families are looking for?
I would say that nowadays there are a lot more 501c3s in the island than say 10 years ago. So good chances are that you're gonna find the 990s of the larger, and even not even only the largest organizations in the island, but many organizations in Puerto Rico, because after Maria there were a lot of opportunities and with foundations and other corporates that required the 501c3. So we've seen an increase of those. Some of them know about the Guide Star, about the Charity Navigator, and some of them will have it, not all. But definitely that is not such a large problem. Obviously, the smaller organizations you won't find. But again, I would look then for Fundación Banco Popular, Fundación Ángel Ramos, Fundación Colibrí, the different foundations in the island that we're on the ground. We've been for a long time. We do have the staff to go and make sure that these are bona fide organizations on the ground. So that's what I would do. I would look for the local funders that have been here for a long time funding nonprofit organizations, because their list is going to be vetted already.
So just to confirm, so if an NGO is under the Popular umbrella, right, Fundación Popular, doesn't necessarily mean it's fully funded, right? That it doesn't need additional donations.
Oh, no, yes, no. Not at all.
Just clarify.
I can speak to that.
Yes.
I am a partner with Fundación Banco Popular. We're funded by them. They fund some of our programs, part of our programs. And I think that what we have developed throughout the time with Fundación Popular in this case is the partnership. So they get to know our needs. There's a constant conversation that is beyond accountability. Of course, we have to respond for the use of the money. We say what we're going to use it for, and we respond to that. But there's also, because there's a trust relationship built, there's also sometimes flexibility to really respond to what the community needs are. And in our case, you ask if we're vetted, organizations are vetted, they know our financials. There's a process of constant communication. What are the struggles? What is the interest of the foundation? It's important that we are aligning what we're doing. But I think as you look into organizations to fund or to invest in, there's plenty of organizations to meet your interests. There's a lot. If you ask me, you give all your money to the Boys and Girls Club, it will be good use. It's 80-20%, 80% to services. But there's plenty of organizations to meet your needs, because it has to speak to your heart. it's not just to do a good deed, you have to feel part of it. And I think, to Beatriz's point, if you go to foundations, they will tell you you're fine if you do give to these organizations. They sometimes have a hold of the smaller organizations that wouldn't have visibility otherwise. And I think as well, us as big organizations in Puerto Rico, Boys and Girls Club, because of our size and reach, is kind of out of the spectrum. We also have a responsibility of ensuring the aggregate impact. And how do we serve as aggregators to the smaller organizations, being partners with them or just exposing them? I've had instances where people come to us and I say, you know what, that's not in our line, but you can talk to this person. Because there's a network of us working. If there's something environmental, I'll send them to Naturaleza. When we have to do things, we partner with them. Because it will take me a while to become an expert in what they do great. So it's part of what we do in this sector.
Do all the NGOs get along?
I would
think so.
say so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a collaborative spirit. It's not a zero sum.
There's competition for funds,
Yes.
but we
Yes.
get along very well.
Yes, you know that when I came into this sector 17 years ago, that was something that I did see, that not many organizations knew each other, and precisely the ones that were doing kind of the same thing in different parts of the island. So we started a program that is called Promoting Alliances. And I was going to speak about it a while ago when Carlos was mentioning that the leaders of the organizations need to, to kind of step back and get a little bit of love from all of us, because they are burnt out. And this program, the last 2 years, we meet at least once a year. We do fund different collaborations that arise from these summits that we do every year. But the last two summits, we've really focused on them. So we've brought people in to really, spend the day not only kind of, knowing more about each other and about each other's work, but also to step back and reflect on, on what they need to continue, their work and continue their roles as leaders of these organizations.
I'm going to just presume that some people in the audience this morning are potential private donors or are potential corporate sponsors, corporate partners. What are some high impact needs that each of your organizations has identified right now? I mean, you talked before about like Loisa, that's an area, that's a pocket in particular where you could really use partnering and resources. But educate us on some others.
Definitely Loisa. We do have also a place-based project in Culebra. There are very interesting things happening in Culebra on the environmental front, actually. So we are supporting several and partnering several nonprofit organizations there. I would say, if you ask this question to a funder, you will definitely focus on what your causes are. So for us, it's very important to support education and innovative education projects. Puerto Rico will not progress unless we provide good, high quality educational opportunities for all children in Puerto Rico. And I know that our Department of Education is really working right now on, making an overhaul but we still need people like us that come in and fund innovative ideas, innovative nonprofits that have really helped shape what is the education system in Puerto Rico. So I would say education is a pocket. Also, entrepreneurship is a pocket. It has improved over the last decade, but we still need to continue promoting that people are willing to start their own businesses, and that starts with education, training, to children, youth, and the different NGOs that are providing support to entrepreneurs on the ground.
Can I ask you to identify one or more NGOs that are particularly promising in that area?
in the
In entrepreneurship, sorry.
in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to be fair.
Sorry,
so
I'm
I
putting
would
you on the
say
spot.
yes. You're
When I say
putting me
one
on
or
the
two.
spot. But you know, we support Grupo Guayacán. We support Paralel 18. We support Centro para Emprendedores. We support Causa Local. So I would say we support more than 15 organizations that are supporting entrepreneurship in the island. So, you know, any of them would be a great investment.
Carlos, you're a very polite gentleman and letting all the ladies go first. But I fear you're too polite.
So from our perspective, in for the work we do, donors always could help through our reforestation program that Fundación Banco Popular has been helping. It's one of our biggest partners, and we had a goal after Hurricane Maria to reforest the island. We like to plant about 100,000 trees a year. So we not only planting the trees, so we also donate the trees. We donate about 30,000 trees just a few months ago. So just to continue that kind of project, we need donors. We do state, federal, nonprofit funding, but that having that connection, and we talked about it before about having the donor have that connection to that place or to that tree, to that ecosystem, to a wildlife. So that's very important, through our land acquisition program. There's tax exemptions through when you donate land to the Conservation Trust of Puerto Rico, is the main organization for Naturaleza. So just having that connection for us between the donor and the programs that we do, we will love operational funding, but having projects that people really attach themselves, where they live, or their neighborhood. There needs to be an area that needs to be conserved, that it could be threatened by development or contamination. We could be there to help to manage that property, acquired it, and working with a community group, that will help us to manage the land. It's something we've been collaborating with multiple groups throughout the island for communities to, be the ones that take care of the land. So for us, it's very important for donors to understand what we do and what they would like to donate.
I have a story on that because we were super excited about the reforestation. So I was like, we're gonna put the money to plant the trees, but then they came back to us and they told us, well, we need money to make sure that those trees don't die. So so let's plant the trees and then, make sure that you give us some funding to make sure that those trees, are kept alive and produce the oxygen that we need from those, and they capture the CO2, etc. So we've learned through them that that's important too. So it will take us longer than I originally wanted to, plant the amount of trees that we want to plant.
Yeah, there is so many projects like that. They don't need continuation. You make that initial investment, you want that to see that investment, and will be through reforestation or even an educational program. You want to continue those educational programs, just from the little kids to the retirement folks right now. So we have an elderly community in the island that is keep growing, and they want to do things. So there are a lot of them that are helping us as volunteers. There's another way to donate to some of the NGOs. Is volunteer your time, volunteer your resource is a great way.
Yeah, for us, obviously, education is paramount to the work that we do. I mentioned that in Puerto Rico, 56% of the kids live under poverty. In our populations, it's 90%.
90%.
So the kids that come through our doors every day, 90% of them live under poverty.
When you say poverty levels, at the federal poverty level?
Yes.
Okay, which is?
In Puerto Rico, in the States, it's $23,000. Here we're looking at $8,000. We have families that live with $8,000.
Thank you.
So
that was the point I wanted
so
to
when
make.
we talk about Puerto Rico being poor, it's at this point it's close to a third part of the poorest state in the United States. So in addition to education, that already do not have the opportunities, because most of our kids go to the public schools in Puerto Rico, hunger is an issue. And with that, you tie it to the social emotional issues. We had to invest these past 2 years in adding a social pillar to our programming because of the levels of trauma in our communities. So as you think through, and we deal with early childhood, we have Head Start and Early Head Start. We have the after school, we go from 6 to 18, and we added in the past 3 years workforce development programs. So I look from 0 to 60. And in all that span of ages, all of these issues are the same: education, hunger, and social emotional. So it has to become one of our main components, and that requires specialty people, prepared people, and investment, because when you talk about social emotional, it needs continuation. You need to build the relationships. In our case, our profile is single mothers with 2 or 3 kids. So the father figure is in our clubs. So when I move a staff, it's not only moving a staff, I'm impacting a life that was attached to that person. So when you do those type of efforts, the one-off sometimes are more hurtful than helpful, because you're continuously breaking those communication cycles between the participants and
So
the
how
tutors.
is the social emotional essential to breaking the poverty cycle?
It is in a way that you have to raise kids and youth that are strong, that are resilient, and these kids, and when you live under poverty, you do not have great education, you don't have opportunities, you don't have food, you don't have your parent, so it keeps compounding under the impact keeps compounding, and it goes into the future. So they don't heal. So one of our most popular programs is one program that is called Juntos Sanamos, and it's how do you heal through arts. And it's one of our most popular, and when you interview kids, they will say, oh, I owe this to Juntos Sanamos. It's how you continuously provide them with that vehicle to express their feelings and to heal their feelings and provide resources to that.
I'm mindful of our time, so I want to make sure that I get the messages out that you want to convey to potential partners, to potential donors. Just throw out some of the things you want people to know that you need.
We need money, but
Right.
besides that, it's important that you find something that, like I said before, speaks to your heart. Sit down with us, ask your questions, like any other questions you would ask in a business. Your financial performance, your receivables, your payables, your amount of money in the bank, how many people we serve, how do we serve the people, what is the level of our staff, how do we measure our staff, and make those questions that make you feel comfortable and build a trust in wherever you are investing. So I think that it's important that you understand what is your willingness to contribute, how do you want to get involved, what is your legacy, and then let your pocket and your mind speak to that and get aligned to those things.
Carlos.
Well, I will encourage any donors to help us to protect the 33% of the island. It's a goal that we have.
33%?
33% that we want to protect. With the help of our partners, not just all us, but just helping us will be through land acquisition, through donating to our reforestation program, or any other programs. You guys can find us on Naturaleza.org, and you can see all our projects that we have. And we had our big donor dinner a few weeks ago. And we will have another one on 1st of December. You can look in our website. So just familiarize with us and familiarize with the greenery of the island. You know, the ecosystems and the biodiversity in Puerto Rico is a unique place. There's only one Puerto Rico. There's only Cars Hills. So just look at all our initiatives and see what it could fit better for you and your family. And we can talk about how you guys can donate and collaborate with us.
Beatriz.
And I would only add that, there is a vibrant philanthropic community in Puerto Rico. We have Philanthropic Puerto Rico, and we're all here and more than willing to, support and help educate, this community in any way that they need to support our nonprofits and our partners on the ground, and make sure that investment is leverage the best way possible.
Is there a sense, we only have a couple of minutes, so is there a sense that the people who are coming here, who are living here, are doing enough, who are coming here and are benefiting from the act, are giving enough back to the island and to the NGOs on the island, or could there be more? I'm going to be, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm the reporter, so I can be undiplomatic and you can be diplomatic. How's that?
Great.
I'm just going to put it out there. I think $10,000 is a paltry amount for individuals to be required to give. Perhaps there is a better way to scale it, but I personally think, my personal belief is that it's a moral obligation if you're coming to live in this beautiful island and to enjoy the nature and the lifestyle and the beautiful culture and people welcome us here, that it's incumbent upon us to give far more than $10,000 a year and far more than the minimal energy required in writing a check, that we need to get out of our homes, get out of our gated communities, and come and volunteer and get to know each and every one of you.
I would answer that with a quote that I recently read from Simon Sinek, that it says, don't give to get, give to inspire others to give.
Well said.
Well, if I could wave a magic wand, I would increase that amount of money, but alas, I have no pull in the legislature. But I'd like also just to sort of finish with a final magic wand. Are there any other magic wands that you could think of that would help lift you all in your collective efforts?
Just partnership is probably the key. It's not about one organization or multiple organizations through the island. We mostly know each other, and usually if you go to a bigger foundation or an NGO, we could direct you who needs the most.
Thank you all very much. I encourage every one of you to look up our speakers after this morning. Ricky.
Good morning. As an organization, this has been a very enlightening panel. Thank you for doing this for us. This event is recorded, so I would say is, what advice your organizations are pretty much the gold standards on how operations should be run, and it's hard. Olga mentioned, I believe, it's the mindset of having a private mindset, but running as a nonprofit. What advice would you have to other organizations to become the gold standards as yourself?
I would say take risks, support innovation and innovative leaders, stay the course, and become educated on the causes that you want to support and where you want to have the impact. And if it doesn't exist, develop it. But always in partnership with the nonprofit organizations on the ground.
I would say, in addition to what Beatriz mentioned, to not be afraid to step back and look at yourself. Have that look at the future. Where do I want to go and what do I need to do in order to get there? And then transform whatever needs to be transformed. Sometimes a step back is the first step to acceleration in the right direction. And sometimes NGOs, we're afraid of that. We have to lose that fear. We just have to look at the end goal and go for it, but sometimes transformation needs to happen, and it's okay too. You can take your hands out of the direct service, leave the others working, and just step back and think through.
And I would add that corporates were sometimes too arrogant to understand that we're part of the systems that we want to change. And so when you start asking yourself, how are you contributing to a problem? How are you contributing to women that are victims of domestic violence, being financially abused? How your requirements for your products and services are really, making those structures that really prevent them to break that abuse cycle. That's when you really start making and producing change.
I would like to add just to focus in your goals and your mission, and don't be afraid of asking. You know what is the value of the work you do, so don't be afraid. We struggle sometimes with donors. They want to donate for a specific project, and you're like, no, this project costs a certain amount. And they're like, no, but I just have that. So just don't be afraid of asking. Don't be afraid of negotiating. If the donor wants to contribute, they're going to negotiate with you. And you can explain it since you're the one who's going to be doing it, and you're going to be responsible for doing it. So if you want to do a good job, don't be afraid of asking.
That's great advice. 100%. Thank you all very much for sharing. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Pedro Cardona. I've done a lot of fundraising for different organizations, probably over $1 million, and I've donated as well. And one thing that I've found at times is that organizations don't ask enough, because donors that have the capability to donate, and you're asking them maybe for $5 grand, 10 grand, they're like, that's not going to make a difference. So going to what you're saying, I think that it's upon you guys and the NGOs to truly show what you guys are doing, the actual impact, and to, like you said, not be afraid to ask, and ask in a way that people can really know that it's going to make a difference. Because I was shocked when you said $8,000. I was like, tears came down my eyes. Because I was like, wow, how can you live with that? I was there as a child, going to public school, going through all that. And so I reflect on it, I'm like, wow, there's so much need and so much that we could do. But I think that you guys need salespeople. You really need salespeople. I think that's something that any good business knows, that business runs on salespeople. So that's what any organization needs. And like I said, I fundraised myself and done sales on that side. And it's the biggest thing is just making sure you ask and connect with that person, that they know that, hey, if I'm going to give $1 million, I'm going to give it a real impact. And I have friends that have donated millions of dollars to different organizations, and it's about that actual impact and seeing it and knowing that's going to make a difference, not just give because you're going to meet the $10,000 requirement. It's giving to actually have an impact. So it's something I want to share. And thanks for what you guys do.
Any other questions? Can we get the microphone over there?
Good morning. What recommendations do you have to create better and results-oriented relationship between the government, the private sector, and the third sector? Because at the end of the day, the third sectors are the ones that know the real needs of the communities and the first responders when disasters comes, etc. But as a matter of fact, I run a nonprofit, so that's an important question for me.
I think there's one thing that it's proven right for us, and I think it will be good for other organizations, is that to take that first step in being accountable, especially with government funds. Something that we've seen, we receive assignments from the government and we just get it, we advocate for it. But 2 years ago, we started going to the budget office of Puerto Rico saying, I want to show you what we did with the millions that we got. And then we were able to show that we were multiplying 4 times what we got with the impact. So I think there has to be a change sometimes according to that audience on how you show your impact, and it also be the use of funds. So sometimes the funders, especially government, they ask you for programmatic reports. They go to a desk, and a person goes page through page through page and give you recommendations and takes money away from you if you have a mistake. But there has to be a conversation at a higher level as to what is the impact that you are collectively doing with the agency through the work that we do. And that conversation, from what I've seen, not many NGOs are having those conversations, and it stays at the programmatic level.